Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing something slightly different. I've seen a lot of booktubers do the same thing and it's inspired me to do this in my own home. Basically, instead of doing a book haul, today I'm going to be doing a book unhaul. There's so many books that I have kept on my shelves for years. Yeah, actual years. I was thinking, nah, not years, maybe just months, but no. They've been there for several years now. And either I have read them and did not like them, or I have no intention of ever reading them for one reason or another. Not to say anything bad about these books whatsoever, but just because for me personally, I know I'm not gonna get to them anytime soon, and there's no point of hoarding a bunch of books when I could donate them. There's a lot of charity shops in London and it would make, I'm sure, plenty of people happy. So without further ado, I'm gonna be starting this book unhaul. The first book I'm gonna be getting rid of is, unfortunately, I think a book that a lot of booktubers and bookstagrammers have really enjoyed, or at the very least I have seen it numerous times back in the day, so like ages ago. And I bought it half because I think I bought it in an actual second-hand bookshop and it was in really good quality, and so it was quite cheap, but also I bought it at the time because I had seen it in so many places, so many people reading it, and I was just very tempted to read it myself because of that. It is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. So the reason why I don't think I'm going to get to it is because although I am still keeping some fantasy items in my bookshelves because I really want to get to them, I haven't been reading any high fantasy or, you know, completely different world type of fantasy or epic fantasy or just in general, you know, fantasy in ages. I've been reading a lot of contemporary fantasy and paranormal and books like that. So books where the fantasy aspect is just part of the world that we live in. I don't really see myself reaching for pure fantasy anymore. Fantasy where it is set in a completely different world. Like, for instance, Lord of the Rings style is what I mean. So because Uprooted is set up in a completely different world, I'm not really inspired to pick it up, and I haven't been for several years since I've owned it, so I think I'm going to be unhauling this book. The next book I'm going to be unhauling is After You with a Pistol by Kirill Bonifaglioli. So this is the second book in a series, and I read the first one and quite enjoyed it. It's the Charlie Mordecai novels. Basically, you may have seen the movie with Johnny Depp, and it's really not as good as the book. I really enjoyed the first book, but I've owned the sequel for so freaking long, and let's be honest, it is quite old. It dates back from 1979 is when it was first published, and I don't know, the writing style is a little bit more convoluted, I want to say, and it's fun, but I just have not been inspired to read this one, and I just don't think that I am ever gonna be. So maybe I will change my mind at some point and then I will buy the book again, but in the meantime I just don't think it makes sense for me to keep it on my shelves. Also, one of the main reasons I had bought it was because I loved the covers so much. I just think they're really fun and I love the illustration on them, so that's cool, but it's not reason enough to keep a book. The next book I'm going to be unhauling is You Don't Know My Name by Kristen Orlando. So I have read this book and I've forgotten most of what happens in it, and all I remember is that I just thought it was extremely average, like borderline bad in my opinion. Like, I just did not enjoy that book that much, really didn't, and case in point, I barely remember what happens in it. All I know is that it's a YA novel where the main character is, I think, the daughter of spies or something, and she herself is a spy, and yeah, that's all I remember. So I think it's time for me to unhaul this book. I hold no sentimental attachment to it. There's some books that I think I've probably rated around the same, you know, stars as this one, and I am keeping them, but this one just, I don't want to keep it. It just doesn't do it for me, you know? The next book I'm gonna unhaul is Two for the Dough by Janet Ivanovich, which is a Stephanie Plum novel. So I don't know whether you know the series, but I read the first book of the series a while ago now, which is One for the Money. Basically, it's about this girl who's out of a job and finds herself trying to become a bounty hunter, and it overall, the feeling that this series evokes to me is really fun, fast-paced, action-packed, kind of silly fun. There's, you know, sexy moments with a romantic interaction with some romantic interest guy who is probably a bit too sexist for my liking. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, I've owned this book for a very long time and just have never reached for it and have never had the desire to read this second opus. So I just don't think I am going to read it. It's just not to my taste anymore. I read the first one such a long time ago, and I don't even think I would enjoy the first one that much if I reread it today. So I think this is it for that series. The next book I've got, quite similarly, is The Fall by Guillermo del Toro, and this is the second book from a series he wrote. The first one was called The Strain. I think there's a TV show that came out afterwards, but basically he originally wrote the book because he tried to make it into a movie or a TV show and no one wanted to buy it, and so he was like, whatever, I'll just write it as a book then. And then the book had a really big success, so they ended up being like, oh, we're gonna buy the rights and make it into a TV show. The story is about, I think it happens on the plane, the first one, and basically there's some strange illness that seems to take over and everyone seems to die on the plane. The whole plane lands, I think, or crashes, I'm not sure, and everyone on it is dead, and they quarantine it and everything, and then they discover that the people are coming back from the dead and they've become vampires. Really creepy, spooky, horror type of vampires. It was really, really good, actually, now that I'm summarizing. It was such a good book, I really enjoyed it, but I've never ever picked up the second one. I barely remember the first one. I don't really have an interest to read it again, so I don't even have it in this flat. I think it's back home in Belgium, so I think I'm not gonna keep the second book because it makes no sense for me to keep it this many years and just never pick it up, and yeah, it's just taking space for nothing. The next book I'm going to be unhauling is Blood for Blood by Victoria Selman. This was because it was one of those Amazon deals, first readers or whatever, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a deal where, because you're a Prime member, you get access to some books early and you get access to some physical books for not a lot of money. I can't remember exactly how it works. But basically I bought this one because I had access to the Kindle one really early on or something. And I was like, oh, you know what, I'd like to have it physically, because it was the time when I was starting to buy physical books again a little bit more. So that's why I bought it, without realizing I was gonna hate it. And it's a thriller, it happens in London, and that's all I remember. I just remember that I really disliked all of the characters and DNF'd it. It was just not great. I think you follow the point of view of the main character she's a cop, and as well as the point of view of the serial killer who basically is trying to get her attention because he's like in love with her or something. I'm not quite sure. Like he admires her work or some shit, and he's like, if anyone's gonna understand what I'm trying to do and the message I'm trying to get out there by killing all those people, it's gonna be her. Except obviously she doesn't, and then there's also like a bunch of other characters that were very dislikable, and I just DNF'd it and don't want to own books that I DNF really, so that's it. The next book I've got, I feel a little bit bad about this one. It's called The Book of Speculation by Erica Swyler, and I got it from this membership I used to have that was basically for kind of like a book box, but it's not, you know, Illuminate or whatever they're called. It's not one of those big book subscription boxes. It's one where the people check your likes and dislikes. Like, you can send them a list of the genres you enjoy, the books you've liked, everything. You can send them even your Goodreads account and they can check, or like your Bookstagram or whatever, they can check what you've read, what you've enjoyed, everything. And then they select a book for you each month, I think, and then send it to you, and you pay obviously the price of, I can't remember how much it was, but probably like a tenner or something. Or I think maybe you pay for a 3-month deal and then they send you 3 books, one each month, something like that. It was really, really good, and there were 2 books that they sent me that I read and absolutely loved, so I was really happy with the choices they picked for me, and I thought it's such a cool idea. I love the concept. But I never got to read this one. This one was sent to me, and I'm just not that interested by the summary, and yeah, I just don't think I'm gonna end up reading it anyway, so I might as well unhaul it, give it to a charity shop, to hopefully someone who's gonna enjoy it properly, unlike me. And then finally, the last book that I'm gonna unhaul, which is great because the sun is starting to get a bit low and my lighting is going bad. So anyway, this one is Smoke and Summons by Charlie Holmberg. So I read the Paper Magician series, not the entirety of it, I think the 2 first books or something, and then I DNF'd it because I was starting to get annoyed at the characters. I really enjoyed the first one, so I kind of thought maybe I'm gonna enjoy other books by the same author, and this was also one of those Amazon first reads deal, so I bought this one at the same time as Blood for Blood, and then just never wanted to pick it up. And every single time I look at the summary and I'm like, maybe I'm gonna keep this one, maybe I'm gonna read it, I just don't want to, so it makes no sense for me to keep it. It was just a silly buy. It was also one of those, oh, it's really cheap, I'm gonna buy it, and it's just pure consumerism for no other reason than that, so it makes no sense for me to keep it. And that was it. That's all the books that I'm gonna unhaul. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a total of 8 books, which is funny because it matches exactly how many books I intend to read next month. So you know what, I'm just making space for the new books on my shelves. That's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, you know the drill, and I will see you guys next time.